Section 2. SwiftUI Advanced. In this section, we're going to learn how to create a complex form user interface, how to modally present this view as a sheet, the different property wrappers in SwiftUI and their meaning. Then we're going to use core data with SwiftUI, and last but not least, how to run your code base on 3 different devices. Create complex entry form. In this video, we will develop a form, just like the mockup you see on the right, that allows the user to create a new journaling entry. But first, some theory. Property wrappers are heavily used in SwiftUI. They basically abstract boilerplate code into a simple annotation. Since Swift 5.1, developers can actually introduce their own custom property wrappers as well. In this video, we're going to look at the @state property wrapper. According to the Apple documentation, it's a persistent value of a given type through which a view reads and monitors the value. Basically, it means whenever the state property changes, the view is rendered again. It acts as a single source of truth and hence reduces errors. You can also pass so-called bindings to this state property via the $sign. So you pass the state property, or basically the binding, to another object. Whenever they modify this object, the state is modified too, and the view gets rendered again. Now let's get started. Let's start by creating a new view. Mark Application, File, New, File, SwiftUI View, and let's call it Create Entry View. Now first of all, let's think about all the values the user will be able to add on this screen. The title, the text of the journaling entry, the date of the entry, and the category, personal or work. In this case, the picker will return an index. So 0 for personal, 1 for work. Now let's have a look at the body. SwiftUI provides us with a handy view called form, which is exactly what we need in this case. It behaves a lot like a list. We can also group it in sections. So we'll group it in one section where the user enters title, text, and date, and another for the personal or work category. For entering the title, there is something called text field that SwiftUI provides us with. The text field takes a title and a binding to a string. The title is the placeholder, and the binding to a string is, you remember correctly, the $annotation of a state property. But our title is not yet a state property, so let's add @state to our title. You remember, now that title is a state property, our view gets re-rendered every time the title changes. And because text field has a binding to our title through the $, it basically has access to that title and can change it. All our other properties will also have to become state properties, so we can also add the property wrapper right now. Now the next thing our user is going to be able to choose is the text. Let's copy this text field and change the property binding to text. The last thing the user will be able to choose in this section is a date. SwiftUI provides us with a date picker where the selection is also stored in a state variable. In our case, .date. And we can return a view that describes for the user what the picked date is used for. In our case, it's the entry date. Alright, now let's resume the automatic preview and have a look at what we have programmed so far. Nice, the user can enter title, the text, and the date. So as I said before, we want to have a second section where the user can also choose the category. And we want to add some explanation, so we're going to add a header to this section. SwiftUI also provides us with a more general type of picker than just a date picker, and it's called picker. There would also be an explanation possible, but in our case we don't need that. The selection should again be stored into our state variable category index. And for this picker, we define the view ourselves. So in our case, we want to have all the possible categories available shown as buttons or as texts. To do that, we simply use the for each view to iterate over all categories. For that, we will go to our model class category and make it conform to the handy protocol case iterable. With that, category gets a new property called all cases. Does exactly that. It gives you all the possible cases of that category. So here we just write category.allCases. You remember that from list, you always have to choose an ID that is unique for every category, where SwiftUI knows how to differentiate them. The syntax is backslash dot, and in our case we just take raw value, because that's already unique. And in the closure, we get the current category of each loop passed into. We're going to use that to fill a text property with the category name. Now, last but not least, we have to define the style of the picker. There is a picker style that's called segmented picker style. And we're going to use just that. Let's again resume our automatic preview. Sometimes you just have to hit try again, and we can already see our cool create view. This was the video about how to create a complex form user interface